Thanks for coming back for another episode of 10,000 Miles. Today I talked to a very special individual. Her name is Candice Van Dertholen. And what a life Candice has led. From an early age, found herself heading down a wrong path and doing some things that you'll hear in this episode that, as she'll say, I'm not quite proud of. But boy, everyone's going to be proud how she come out on the other side of all this adversity. Had a tough life, had to overcome a lot of things, had to really discover and find herself and sort of grow. And one day make a very strong decision that today's the day everything changes. And that is a powerful testament. And when people are able to pull themselves out from the gutter, from things that you think you'll never come back from, and be able to come out on the other side, so bright, so shining, that it brings a lot of joy to my heart, but also it's a story I want to share with all of you. Candice is a Reiki master practitioner and deals with energy and energy healing. And as you'll hear, we talk about this. Energy healing is thousands of years old with Tai Chi and Qigong and Reiki came from Japan, long time ago. And she'll tell you, while it's not the be all end all, it's a big part of total health for people. And again, it's been studied for 1,000 years. So we tried not to make this a little too woo-woo because, that's some of the terms people use and they don't want to latch on. But I think your health and your personal journey is attacking yourself from all vectors. So it's your mind, your spirit, your body, your soul, your food, your physical, all of that. And if you leave something out, you're going to have a little gap there. So let's jump into this episode. I think you're going to fall in love with Candice. Her story is great. She's vulnerable. She's honest. She's pure. And then when you hear how astute she is in her subject matter toward the backside of this episode, you'll appreciate sort of the magnitude of this journey and what she's come from and what she's become. So let's dive in. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Candice, welcome to another episode of 10,000 Miles. How's your day going?
It's going really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. I am glad to hear your day is going well. We've exchanged a lot of conversation. I would say not like 20-year friends, but more than most people I have cold on the podcast. And we got to bond over some technology, which is always a lot of fun, which is cool. So we'll come and tell that story a little bit later. But by the way, your tech is spectacular right now. It's just unbelievable. It's great.
I have a good tech guy if you need to know his contact.
Yeah, he's okay. He's all right. He's a patient guy here. Good. Candice, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Candice Van Dertholen. I'm a holistic practitioner who focuses on root cause healing.
We're going to unpack the heck out of that later, okay? Because it's funny. I've had healing from so many. I'm so attracted to people getting well, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it is that people need and find, and how they find their pathways to health. And usually, it's all of those things. But I've had a little bit of conversation in the space that you operate in, which is what really said, hey, I want to learn more about that, which is why I reached out to you, Candice, to say, hey, let me reach out to Candice. This is what she does. Looks like she's got some good content around it. But what the audience doesn't know is Candice and I had a long conversation where she told me her personal story. And so today we're going to unpack this wonderful journey that you're on, which at times I'm sure wasn't so wonderful. But, as you just told me before we got on and speaking to people, when people come to meet you now, they're never going to believe this story because you're so grounded. You're so pleasant, right? You're a great communicator. And let's just dive in. Like, take me back to tell us about Candice. Where'd you grow up?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I think people are always surprised by my story because they don't present like I've been through so much hardship in this state of being. I'm going to say that now because it hasn't always been the case. But I grew up in a small little city, Amarillo, Texas. If you know where it's at, everybody drives through it eventually.
Yep.
And I didn't have like this terrible childhood necessarily. My parents just worked all the time. Mom was an overnight nurse, dad was a server. So I just literally never saw my parents.
Okay.
And growing up, I realized that there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I wasn't fully aware of. There was a lot of domestic abuse and things that were just hidden. And both of them really struggled with different types of disorders. And so growing up, I always kind of felt isolated in my experience, which would eventually lead me into depression.
Mm.
So I started having signs of depression probably as early as like fifth grade. And I became overweight and I was going through all of that. And it was a lot of I look back and I can understand why I really didn't feel, it's not that I didn't feel safe at home. Like my parents were never harmful to us. We always had our basic needs met. It was the nurturing that was just not available.
Okay.
And trying to fit in as a teenager, as an overweight kid, like it's just not a thing, not in the 90s, right? And so
Wasn't that way in the 70s either. So
no, I
I
don't
was
know.
telling somebody on another episode, I wasn't always this handsome. So joke, but I was the husky kid. I was wearing like the Sears husky jeans.
Mm-hmm.
And back then there was a patch that had the size, much like Levi's have the size of the jeans on the outside. I mean, that's like a fat kid's, nightmare, by the way.
Nightmare.
I got to wear that size. And so what was even worse is when you had the patch and it said like 20 husky. That meant like bigger than 20. That's what it really meant, And my gosh, trauma,
It's literally
childhood trauma. So no, yeah, it's been like, I guess it's always been like that. It's tough,
yeah.
but
Well,
so you were struggling through that. And you think this is
yeah.
like the lack of nurture, trying to fit in, and you start becoming, and you don't have somebody pulling you out of it. It didn't sound like, I think about with my
Well,
own kids, there's so many times had they not gotten the nurturing, you could fall into a little, pothole here that could turn into an abyss if somebody's not there to, pick you up and say, hey, this is going to be okay. You're going to get on the other side of this.
yeah, which is where I headed.
Yeah.
My parents got divorced when I was in seventh grade. And,
Okay.
my mom was the super strict one and my
Okay.
dad was not. So
Yep.
guess where we wanted to go live?
Of course.
Ended up living with my dad where, again, he just didn't have the capacity to really parent the way he could have. And so I started working in a restaurant very early on at 16. And I actually had another job at 15, but I started working in the restaurant and I looked much older than I was. And back
Yep.
then they weren't super big on carding. So I was
Yep.
going to dive bars and staying out all night, partying, doing all this stuff that I should not have been at
Mm-hmm.
16, because I was running around with adults, well, young adults in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where it started. I found my way, in a bad path, just getting into drugs. And again, when you don't have supervision, like you don't know any better, right? And or at least I didn't. And I'm in a small town, so it's not
Yeah.
like you can get away with it very long without people knowing. But it was just a really hard time. I was slowly separating myself even further even when I look back, I was so lost and I was so hurting as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that would come to an end. I would end up moving in with my mom, who had moved to Tennessee at the time.
Okay.
And I had tried to get my life together. I was going to the gym, I was working out, I was going to go in the army, and that's what I was going to do. And I was out on a run. And in Tennessee, they don't have a leash law. So these dogs were coming up. I literally have my Walkman in, and I'm playing. Let me think of I can't. Why can't I think of it now? Of course. Hey, we can edit this out because it's really
No, we're going
important.
to keep it in. This is human being stuff. This
Yeah.
happened to me the other day on an episode. I completely locked and I said the same thing. We're going to edit this out. And the guest said, no.
Oh,
We have to keep this in
well, yeah,
because you're going to remember again. And when you do, it's going to
yeah.
be the
I'm gonna be
aha
always
moment. And
there.
it did happen. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just remember I had my Walkman in and I'm going downhill and I see these dogs come up and I side shift. Well, when I did that, my left ankle rolled and it wasn't just like a half roll, it literally twisted all the ligaments in my ankle. So I hopped up. I'm super upset. The lady takes me home. Between the mile that I was away from my house, I go to step out of the vehicle and I crash to the ground because my
Oh,
ankle is just so unstable. So fast forward, that was like at 17. By then, I was like, this is the end of my world. Like, I can't do anything right. And I started really spiraling. I mean, that was my first attempt to take
17. Wow.
17. I thought my world was ending, and that would be my first attempt to take my life.
Oh my gosh.
So, it was, I just felt like I didn't have a purpose. I can't do anything right. Right. And, my mom, I love her to death. She didn't know how to handle it. And she was very upset with me that I had attempted, in other words. And
Yeah.
so, again, love her so much. She just didn't know what she didn't know. And again, though, I was unsupported. And
You
so,
know,
go ahead.
if I could just jump in a second, I mean, the way you speak of this now, I mean, you're full of grace, right? And I talk to my kids about this all the time, and it's not something I was not a grudge holder ever. But when I
Mm-hmm.
really understood, as you get older and you start realizing your parents are human beings and, right, wrong, indifferent, show up, not show up, it's like they're these complex vessels. Who knows who showed them the way? You weren't there when the people before them showed them their way. So in essence, what training did they get to handle becoming a parent? And people deal with it differently. And some people hold grudges and hate their parents and never talk to them. But that forgiveness that you have and that recognition that they're just human beings, like they did the best they could. They were trying to make a living. Who knows the cards they were dealt? You
Mm-mm.
probably didn't know all of them,
Nope.
right? As a kid. And, just, I commend you for it because it's not everybody can get there.
Yeah.
Not everybody
Well,
does get there.
yeah, there's a lot. So I'm going to expand on this because it's
Yeah,
something I
please
want to
do.
write about. And
Okay.
I think that our labels that we have and we identify people with are so damaging because labels set expectations and
Such
place
as what
so
labels?
like mom, father,
Okay.
right? Let's start there.
Yeah.
That sets an expectation of they need to be perfect in our world
Mm-hmm.
because the external world has also confirmed this is so.
Yeah.
Meaning we see a ton of movies, we see all the things like growing back up in the day, we had like all the sitcoms, right? And so, if you have this label of mother and father and you don't have a lived experience that meets your expectations internally, you're already feeling it once. Then you see the world that has something different and you feel it double. So, one, we have to get to a place of healing to be able to see our parents as humans, because I think that there are definitely different forms of experiences that can be really hard for somebody to want to do
Mm-hmm.
that. Totally understand. And there are also the ability for us to be able to see them as the human being that they are. Like you just said,
Yeah.
they're living in a human experience that we know very little about. And especially for so many of us, we were told not to ask questions. Our parents were also told that they are supposed to keep everything to themselves. So we
Yeah.
have so many generations of suppression. And it was always thought to be protective. But what it
Yes.
does is it leads us to internalize and interpret our world how we do. And
It's very interesting.
everybody does that differently.
You can expand that into everything beyond parenting because the universe, when there's a lack of information, creates it.
Mhm.
Right? And it could be 180 degrees heading in the opposite direction. That's why news is bad. That's why I wouldn't say news, commentary in news that might not be based on fact. That's why rush to judgments are bad. All of these things. But I want to go back to the label a second because you said something to me that no one's ever said to me before, which is why I love doing these podcasts. And I'm thinking about it, and I could understand intellectually the label thing for sure. I get it. There's an expectation. But on the other side, people find comfort in those labels. Where's my mom? Where's my dad? All of those things. And I will tell people, when my mom passed away, I was in my 30s. Oh, how old was I? Yeah, I think I was in my 30s. And somebody asked me, what's it like, losing your mother? And some people were younger and some older. And I said, I think even a 70-year-old man needs his mama, but not in a I'm not a grown man and can't raise my family and do these things kind of way. There's this unconditional love that you expect. And maybe this goes back to the labels, and you could get grossly disappointed if it doesn't turn out in your favor. But I would say I don't know, I would love to know the percentages. Like, I was going to guess and say for the vast number of people in society, 70%, I'm going to chat GPT this, by the way, would say they have a loving mother figure. And, the father thing is the phenomenon unto itself. For some reason, the term deadbeat dad didn't appear by itself. I had two amazing parents. Anyway, so I just wanted to point out that you really got me thinking about the label thing. But on the counter side of it is don't people find, it's a question. Do people find comfort in as well? And if you think the label is bad, how should people, address that?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad inherently, right?
Yeah.
I never even think about energy as good or bad either. It's the actions we take that make it so, right? So when you're looking at the labels, it can just create a different experience, right? I look at things as experiences.
Okay.
You were very fortunate in that you had a good experience or
Yes.
a healthy experience with parents. And I would say probably 40% of people in the world have that.
Okay. I'm chat GPTing it right now
I
as we
can't wait
speak.
to hear. I feel like it's probably
It's going to be hard.
or would express that, they feel as if they were supported.
Yeah.
Mainly just because I think we've done a lot of development and a lot of growth. And there are some people who might not be this far in advance to say, like where I'm at, where I'm like, oh yeah, my parents just did the best they could. And I love them. I can see that they were hurting humans, going through their life. And there was a lot I didn't know about. And who's really great at the first child anyway, right? First
Yeah.
child syndrome.
By the way, I want, chat GPT is
this.
going through here. It says, it's telling you what it's querying. There are so many studies on maternal warmth that have come out, and it says, hey, here's the short answer. You're going to be surprised. The best global data point I can find is from the Global Flourishing Study. It's an analyzed paper in 2024 using nationally representative samples from 21 countries. In that data set, they said that 89% of adults felt loved by their mother when growing up. Now, this is one study.
The mother, yes.
Yeah, mother, 81% by their father.
Wow.
That's not the exact phrasing used, but it's the closest apple to apples global measure of perceived maternal love. If you want, I can pull the country by country spread, but the global takeaway is 85 to 90% is a reasonable worldwide estimate for people who would say that they're loving, they had loving mother as measured as felt loved by mother. And this article was written by a guy named J.T. Rothwell in Nature magazine. Now, it's one study. There's not a lot of things here, but it's just interesting because anyway, let's just move on. It's just a data point. It is what it is. And you know what sucks? If you're the 1 in 10, it's 100%. That's a difference. My friend Don will always say, oh, it's, 1 out of 100 people die of this disease. Yeah. And it's not that bad unless that one is you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If that one is you, that's 100% of your universe. You don't feel lucky like you're the one in the 10. You know what I mean? It
Right.
sucks.
Yeah.
So you're 17, you're running with the big dogs. You're exposed to some bad stuff. By the way, were you working at the restaurant that serves the 72-ounce steak?
No, 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 I
No,
was
okay.
not.
Do you
No,
know
no,
which one
no,
I'm
not the
talking
big
about?
Texan, not the big Texan,
The
no.
big Texan. Yeah.
No, I was working at an Outback though, so a
Okay.
steakhouse was, very
Okay.
Texas thing to do. Well, actually by then, yeah, no, I was in Texas still.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so, being out in Tennessee and, I wasn't, was not successful in, the attempt because it really wasn't, it was very surface level. I was just really depressed and I
Okay.
had to end up staying in the hospital for a week. And that was a really, a different experience because I was staying in the children's area because I was
Okay.
17 and my mom made sure that I was in that group instead of the adults.
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of really hurting children and they were so much younger than me. And it was a really eye opening experience. I wouldn't say it shifted my
Mm-hmm.
perspective on myself, but I knew I wasn't at their level of depression. And so
Okay.
I kind of minimized my own experience while being there. I was like, oh, I'm not as bad as they are. So I just need to figure this out and move on. And so I
Was
kind of
that a
shoved it away.
was that a good or a bad thing for you to experience?
Um, so growing up, I'm going to say this, my mom was a NICU nurse and she also helped cancer patients that were my age. So watching them be ill and sick and suffering and like holding on to life,
Yep.
it really had a different perspective in my brain already. And so I think for me, seeing these younger children again, it kind of triggered that memory of like, oh, I need to fight for my life because these children cannot.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's a mix because I didn't still deal with what I was dealing with. I just minimized what I was experiencing and kind of moved on, if that makes sense. Um, it really did kind of land in my heart why it's so important for us to be supporting the youth because you just never
Mm-hmm.
know what they're going through.
Yeah.
So I would say that, fast forward, I go and I get another job at another Outback. Should have learned, but it's fine. So met my kid's father at the time, 17. I'm like all smitten over him. Oh my gosh, he's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And you couldn't tell me anything back then. So we go and we get an apartment together. And guess what? A year later, we have our first child together.
Okay.
And it was an up and downhill battle together. We would have 3 kids together, be married about a year,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't do it anymore. He
You had
was
3 kids in one year? That's a miracle.
no 3 kids 5 years later. So
Okay.
my oldest was 4, my youngest was 6 months old when I decided to get divorced,
Okay.
go back to Texas. And it was a really big decision because again, he was somebody that was just not healthy. He didn't make
Okay.
healthy choices and we were not healthy together.
Okay.
And so moving back was its own battle because I had to move back in with family. And in Texas, if anybody doesn't know, like being a single parent was already a no-no.
Mm.
Having 3 kids at the age of 22 was like unheard of. I remember very specifically going to the church I grew up in,
Yeah.
and they eventually had a single moms group, but
Okay.
it was literally like in the basement, in the back corner. And I think
Wow.
about it now and I'm like, wow, they were really mentally with us, like messing with us. Like they
No
did not
kidding.
want us to be found. I think they were trying to be supportive, but at the same time separate, like don't do this. But anyways, and so all this whole time I still wasn't really getting help for my mental health. Like I was doing my best. I was working 2 and 3 jobs sometimes just to make everything happen for my kids. And I was just struggling, silently struggling. Um, and I did my best. Like I was not the best parent. I worked in restaurants. I worked at the gym, the church, and a restaurant
Okay.
all at the same time. And
Candice, you know what's amazing is, there's so many facts out there that we are not trained with as parents to be able to recognize. Now, maybe your mom was different because she was in the medical field, but I know most people, the peak hormone periods for youth when you're growing, girls 8 to 14, the systems are going haywire. Okay. And there's these emotional fluxes and these psychological fluxes. Boys a little bit later, 10 to 16. I mean, when I sort of talk to other, friends of mine and parents with that, I mean, I don't know a one of us where one kid hasn't gotten overly emotional and said, I'm going to X myself. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to X myself. Completely emotional, coming unglued. And it's during these periods. For some reason, they take it lightly. I don't think mean it. In my house, if you said that, my wife would have crawled up in the fetal position because we have to manage through that. Like we don't know this is a crisis just yet. This is language because people are all out of sorts. So if you're a parent out there, and while I'm no expert and no doctor, I like collecting facts and bringing them back to people. Absolute fact, hormonal changes change emotions, psychology, your coping mechanisms, all of these things. And so you need to be hyper aware that when you're dealing with these things, it's not like, I just get over it. Like you're dealing with biological things that are unavoidable for those children. So it's great to be aware that when these are happening, and it doesn't mean you should discount things, it just means you should be aware of these things. And that should be in the training manual you get when you come out of the hospital. Oh, sorry, we didn't get one of those, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it is really with mental health, and what I've learned in all of my healing for myself has just been that you have to pay attention to those signs.
Yeah.
During COVID, my son really, really struggled.
Okay.
He was finally hitting high school then, because in Washington State, high school doesn't start until 10th grade. So he's finally in there, and then everything shuts down. And so he never had like a normal high school then, because we moved in the middle of COVID for the military. And so he never got to really, his senior year was like his only year of actual connection with people. And, I'll kind of fast forward a little bit of my journey because it's relevant for what I'm about to talk about.
Yeah.
But, my kid's father passed away in 2021.
Okay.
And during that time, I watched my son, even though he was in and out of their life, I watched him deteriorate. And I knew. And so he was sleeping a lot. He was playing games all the time. He was not keeping his room clean at all. Like, I mean, there's a teenage level of like, it's, we got to make sure they bathe and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like he was like abnormally so not wanting to take care of things. And I had to be outside of my comfort zone to just say, hey, I'm noticing these different things and I really care about you. And I just want you to know that I'm here. And that's where it started. And then after I saw it continue to happen, I made the decision that I was nicely enforcing therapy. And I said, I just want you to do this. I don't want you to end up 40 and still trying to work through this pain that you're going through right now. And I said, I know that there's a lot that's going on in your life, from COVID to the loss of your dad to, this is your senior year. And I want to support you the best way I can. And this is how I know how to. And while he wasn't excited to do it in the beginning, he literally was so thankful that he did. And so
that's great. That's really great.
And I know as parents, we don't want to make our kids do anything, but sometimes it requires us to be a little bit uncomfortable and just, I think truly seeing them too. Like I looked into his eyes and I was like, I see you. I can tell you're hurting and I want the best for you. It didn't matter about his grades, because that was the other thing. He was like missing assignments, all the typical signs that you can pay attention to that something's not right.
Yeah.
And so, just stepping out of that uncomfortableness and seeing where they're actually at instead of jumping on their case the first thing.
Totally.
Oh, why are your grades down? Like, obviously there's something going on. And sometimes it can be other things, but most of the time kids do that kind of behavior out of the inability to process. And I can speak to this because what people don't know is I also, during my time in college, I actually went to college for early childhood development.
Okay.
With special populations as my focus, and the way in which we develop and our behavior was what fascinated me. So how we operate, why we operate the way we do. Now, while I didn't finish my degree because I was a single parent, I had to go back to working all the time. I still gathered a lot of information, and that's where the seed of like my curiosity started, with learning how we function as a whole.
Yeah.
And so those are those kind of things that you can pay attention to when the behaviors change. That's usually a big sign. And I encourage to be more inquisitive and stern at the same time. Like we can't just sweep things over, but find out why instead of just jumping to, a conclusion that is in your mind.
Mm-hmm. You know, I have these conversations with my good friend Tony on science, nature, nurture, all of these things. And I remember we were talking a while back, and we were talking about depression, because there are some mindsets that, oh, you're not depressed, you're weak, right? These old school mindsets. So we started really like, that wasn't his thought, by the way, just that, we were observing the views of others. And we started looking through some of the literature and some of the things that came available. And we came across this one study that was pretty comprehensive. It was a collection of many, many, many studies. I forget the name of it. If I find it, I'll post it in the description section. But they said that 30 to 40% of risk for depression is genetic, family history, all of these things. But the majority of what takes those things and sort of sprouts them is environment. So the analogy was used. So the bottom line is, genes load the gun, put the bullets in the gun, but environment pulls the trigger.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so it was fascinating to see that. And so if you're 30% at risk for anything, it's work to steer that, right? And if you don't, and it's not nurtured, and you don't work, and you don't look somebody in the eyes and say, hey, I see you're struggling inside, and this is what we can do to help make that go away or fix it or resolve it or whatever the case may be. Without that 30% is going to get overpowered by the environment. So that guidance is valuable and incredible. Yeah. So couldn't believe that. We were shocked to see it was 30 to 40. I was expecting some bigger number because it seems so hard for people to get out of. And so it's like, there's got to be something going on here, but it's incredibly, the programming of the brain as from adolescent coming up.
Yeah. And, in energy, we see this often. So there were different also scientific studies that they took a group of mice and the first generation to actually test how much we actually inherit trauma, like trauma responses, all the things through our lineage. And so the first generation, they put cherry blossom scent on the food, and as the mouse would go up and eat, it would get electrocuted. And I am not saying I agree with the study. I'm just saying they did it.
It's mice. We're okay.
but
it's for the good of mankind.
Right. Anyways, so they measured the physical reaction in the first generation, and then they did the subsequent 4. And what they found is they had the same reaction from just the scent alone.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah. And so we can physically carry, and the expression can still happen and occur. Like when you have unexplainable things, that's a lot of that's where that's coming from. And I also agree. There was a book by a doctor, Dr. Lisa Miller. It's called The Awakened Brain. Same thing with spirituality. In our brain, there's a 30%, they located it, 30% desire to actually seek a spirit, like some kind of spiritual being outside of yourself.
Okay.
The other 70% of that actual development is environment. So a lot of what we take in as children and adolescents is the environment in which we live in. And that's why, as we're trying to parent forward, and, my kids are adults now, so it's a little different, but, as we're raising these next generations, the big thing that we can provide them are answers, the communication and the ability to feel like they can ask a question and know what's actually going on. It's not like we have to be like, oh, here's like the laundry list of our lives going on, but having to demonstrate to them through showing, like, this is our budget, this is what we have to take care of. It's not to scare them. Like, you can set the tone for anything and set your kids up for success by just explaining things.
Amazing.
Anyway.
I had a discovery for myself that I was able to pass along to my kids, mostly my son and my youngest daughter. And it was that I realized that every time I got good at something, and I became very competent and comfortable, doing those tasks felt easy, or there was no stress, there was no anxiety, there was no fear, there was no whatever, label you want to put on all of that. But when I was about to jump into something that somewhat excited me because it was new and I was that fish out of water, I would get this feeling in my gut, like nerves. And I know people that still, I'm going to come back to a speaker who still goes through this today, but and one day I woke up and I was able to relabel. And I know we were talking about labels here a little bit, but I was able to relabel this feeling instead of tying it to something bad, failure, not in my comfort zone. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm going to be found out, whatever those things are. I just simply said, this is the feeling I get when I'm about to grow.
Yeah. I
Right.
love that.
And so for me, and honestly, it still happens. I've done a lot of speaking publicly because the jobs I had, I would have to do these monthly town halls for hundreds of people, be on calls like this with 1,000+ people, and speak and carry a room and all of those things. And I think it's a little bit in my family upbringing. We're very comfortable communicators, but I practiced and I worked hard at it as well. I used to have a coach that would score me after every town hall. And then we'd say, you did this, you did that, your hands were here, you you that, all of these, crutch words and whatnot. But I still, if I'm in certain situations, I was at an event, over a year ago, and I was asked to be on this panel in front of about 2,000 people, and I'm backstage and I'm having the time of my life, and I'm like totally loose and comfortable. And I know the subject matter completely cold. But all of a sudden, Candice, out of nowhere, I started getting the tingle in my gut. And I was just like, what is going on? I'm just like, this is easy peasy stuff. Like, I got this. I got it. And I just said, bigger stage, 2,000 people, Apple-like setup, just absolute beautiful conference. This is the growth moment for me. Cool. And like this, Candice, it just went away. It just went away. And by no means am I a parent with all the tricks. Boy, I have blew it so many times that it's not funny. Someday my kids will have a podcast and be talking about their old man and go, hey, yeah, he was great, but he wasn't perfect, but we forgive him.
Right.
But that's one thing. If I can leave a nugget behind in this episode, is like recognizing the things that hold you back as something that actually is about to springboard you into the future is so empowering.
Yeah.
Did you have a moment where I know you battled, you said, with some drugs and alcohol. How long did that go on for? Like when did you finally have enough? Or when did the universe have enough with you?
Yeah. So I went through that stint for about a year until I moved out to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then I got back into it with the kid's father until I started having kids.
Okay.
And so like 19-ish was when all of that. And it's not like a proud moment. Like I'm not, it's something that I really struggle. Like you were just talking about the growth moment, like sharing this openly is a growth moment for me because I already, like fear that people are going to discredit me because of my past. And yet I know it's because of my past that actually credits everything that I do today.
100%.
And it's a conflicting feeling, right? It's like, oh, if people know, if they just, because there was a time when I was 16 where I was living on a couch. I ran away from home. I wasn't considered a runaway officially.
Yep.
And, I did that for 3 months, and I will tell you that was like some of the worst times in my life. But I came out of the drug scene. The drugs wasn't the hard part. It was the alcohol.
Okay.
So for me, becoming, going back to Texas, doing all the things, I was still really good about, like, I wasn't drinking during the day or anything, but like at night, I didn't have a way to like calm myself down. I'm still working in
Okay.
the restaurant area. So like I had no problem, having a couple of drinks and then going home. Kids are in bed anyway. So who cares? Tip, pay the babysitter, go home.
Mm-hmm.
But it would really compound when I met my second husband. So, I meet him. He's a paramedic, a firefighter. I'm thinking, oh, this is amazing. Somebody who does great things.
Yeah.
Well, those great things come with a great cost. And a lot of
Sure.
people don't understand what goes on, even in medicine. You see a lot of the trauma, a lot of the suicide and other victims. And so they're seeing a lot of trauma that is not usually processed. It's usually going from one thing to the next. And I didn't recognize all of that. So we get together and there was just a whole lot of things that happened. My mental health would take a big tank during that time frame. And so my kids
Mm-hmm.
would actually go live with my grandmother for a short period of time. Again, not proud of that. It is a very hard thing to talk about because it's still very sensitive to my heart. Because it was all I knew. It was literally my identity. And it, like, if you can envision just shattering someone's entire being, that's how I felt.
Wow.
And his abuse just got worse and worse and worse. I've been hospitalized because of it. Like I've had, all the things. And I finally broke away from him and was doing really well for a period of about a month. And I went to church. Not saying that I don't like church, okay? Like, please don't think
Yeah.
that that's what I'm saying. But on Mother's Day,
Okay.
and it it broke me. I was
Mm-hmm.
emotional. I was crying. I just felt like such a worthless human. And then that would be my last major attempt to take my life. I went to the store, got a bunch of alcohol, took a bunch of aspirin, and woke up in the hospital with direct dialysis to my heart. And I didn't remember getting there. I do not know how I texted my father, but apparently I texted my dad, and that's how I ended up in the hospital.
Holy cow.
Um, and he lived in a different state. So it's not like I had zero family near me. Um, and I woke up and I just realized I never wanted to be there again. And I don't know if anybody's ever had dialysis, but like when it's directly to your heart, you cannot move and you cannot eat. I mean, because if you move too much, then it can puncture something. And so I'm like in the worst pain physically because I didn't know exactly what was going on with my body. I hadn't ate in probably 48 hours. So I'm like even worse. I'm like the hunger that I felt in my body, the shame, the guilt, all of it, it was all coming down. And I remember looking on the shelf, and I think it was Joyce Meyer's book that I saw first, The Battlefield of the Mind. That's what it was. And so I would eventually take it. I couldn't do it at the moment, but I would stay a couple of days because anytime you attempt to take your life, you do have to stay for a couple of days. And it was during that time that a lot started coming forward for me about I was worthy to be healed. I didn't have to live this way. I didn't have to hold the shame and the guilt, and
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to rise out of this. And I remember writing 100 times at least every single day, I want this change. I'm doing this change. I am this change. And
Manifestation.
and I didn't even know at the time. Like I was just journaling and that came to me to do. And I literally made everything change. I, ended up with my kids back with me and working on those relationships. I would meet my now husband, and he met me like when I was going through all of this, and I was like, I'm just telling you now. I was like, here's what's going on. If you want to run, go for it. But I just remember I was determined. I was determined to no longer have any form of addiction in my life. I was not going to let depression get the best of me. And I was going to show my kids that they were worthy, but also I was worthy to be here. Because in the past, I'd only gotten help to be a better parent. I had never done it for myself.
Mm.
And that's something that I hope people hear, because like it truly, you have to do it for yourself. It's
Well, the
not that
airlines have it right, Candice.
you
In case of
do.
emergency, put the mask on yourself first, right? And then help others.
Yeah.
And think about, you being able-bodied in a situation like that, how many people you could help. But
Yeah.
if you're not breathing, zero. And so that analogy runs deep through a lot of things about focusing on yourself. I have a lot of friends that are very faithful in their religious beliefs. I have, and it's not only faithful, but there's these cultural things that are different depending on how you were grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Italians and the Latinos have a lot of similar things, the Greeks, maybe the Europeans, but there are so many things that drive how the family's built, and they all align you to be a slave for your children dead first.
Mm.
And so what you do, and I'm going to drop a bomb here, is this: you end up fucking up a lot, because, and then you could potentially become resentful.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, there are definitely moments in my life that I'm not super proud of. Some I would share here, some I won't, but I was never, fortunately for me, I never got addicted to drugs or alcohol. That was just never my thing. But, sometimes in my parenting, some of the things I would say to my kids or do, and I just thought I was being this hard charging, like, growth oriented parent. And I'm like, man, I wish there are some nights I sit up and I'm like, I can't ever take that back. I can't ever take that back. I'm going to share what I did here. I'm going to really, you're being so kind and vulnerable, and I feel like I owe you the return. My daughter was my oldest daughter was a teenage girl, and, young, 15, 14, whatever. And you know what that age is like. They know everything, right? And I somehow we got in this argument, and she suggested that I didn't know anything. Right. And somehow I was dumb. Well, I unloaded on her. And I said to her, man, I'm so embarrassed of this. I said to her, you think I'm dumb? I said, one day you're going to wake up and realize I might be one of the smartest effing people you know. And if you think you're ever going to be smarter than me, forget it. Man, I cringe even just saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't believe that, like, that's not me. My goal is for all of them to be better and smarter than me. Then I know I've done my job.
Right.
But I was so angry and so hurt. And during a time where I was, as you're getting older, you're like, you want to still feel relevant. Now I'm 61. I don't care if they call me grandpa. I'm purposely putting on black socks with white sneakers, all kidding aside. But like, I tell them all the time, they're like, Dad, you can't say that. You embarrassed me. I'm like, you don't understand. My job is to embarrass you. That's
Mm-hmm.
my job. I'm supposed to do stuff like that. My youngest brings her new boyfriend in. I say inappropriate things. All the girls cringe. They're like, no, he didn't say that. He's dying laughing. And then my
Yeah.
son-in-law comes in. He's like, what's going on? I said, this just happened. And I just said this. He goes, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He's encouraging me. But,
Yep.
I don't know how we got on that topic, but, we're all learning, we're all doing things. So regrets, so you took that. I wanted to tech back and tell you something short that you might not know about me. I was in the music business, right? And what you didn't know about me, though, is when I transitioned from music to technology, I buried the past life 6 feet under.
Wow.
And I just thought if somebody, and I'm telling you this to try to give you comfort in what you're doing here. I thought that if somebody knew I was spent my entire life in the recording studio, not getting my master's degree or, in something specific related to information technology. And here I am leading a group of 1,000 people at one of the biggest banks in the world. Like if they knew about my musical past, I was going to be found out. I was going to be illegitimate.
Hmm.
And I was telling this story to somebody else and told them how I suppressed it. And you know what that person said to me? What, you didn't want to be the coolest guy in the room? Was
Right.
was was that really what you wanted? It might have been Kate Ladon. It was somebody who said, really, you didn't want to let everybody know you were the coolest guy in the room? And I was like, I just never saw it that way.
Yeah.
I saw it but now, this is my journey. It's my life. It's cool. And it's part of it. And I've re-embraced it, I'd say, in the last 10 years, maybe 7. But so for you and your story, and I've been wanting to say this for about 15 minutes now, it's like, I think you probably may have been predisposed to say, I don't want to be found out. I don't want to be found out. I don't want to be found out. Right. If they know this about me, my credibility is going to go down. I'm telling you, the right people, and this is a key, because you don't want to work with everybody. You want to work with the right people. The right people, your stock's going to, like I said, go 1,000x up. Been there, done that. And the strength that you have, having gone what you've gone through. Candice, nobody wakes up in the morning today and says, today I'm going to do everything I can to destroy my life. Yes, conscious decision, right? Who does that consciously? All these subconscious cues come in. But so by no means do I think you woke up and went on this path and said, what can I do to F up my life today? Things just happen. But when you tell this part of your story where you say, I woke up and I just said, enough, done. And then you kicked in. So tell me what kicked in, like what happened. Like, so great stuff. We got up into this part of the story, but now you come out of this. What are the tools? What are the techniques? What decisions did you make that changed everything?
Yeah, so I put myself first for the first
Okay.
time in my
Yeah.
entire life. That was the very first thing. And I got help. I do want to
Mm-hmm.
say, like, I was in therapy. I even went
Yeah.
on medication for a little bit and just started with the very basic things. And I wouldn't even get into the work until I'm into now, until going through 2 major losses. So it was the previous ex-spouse who took his life in 2020. Then the following year, my kid's father, overdosed. And so between those two, even though we were removed from each other, hadn't seen each other in forever, it still impacted my kids.
Of
And then
course.
I'm still trying to process because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this actually happened. And so I had all this stuff going on and I had built up so many great barriers, is what I would call them now, to keep me safe. So I wasn't drinking, wasn't doing anything. And yet my whole world was starting to crumble in. It was like the universe was making me see things that I wasn't dealing with. And I bypassed a lot of my inner work. Like I really did. When I look back, I was doing my best again, but once I found energy work, it literally awakened me to understand how supported we are in
Okay.
everything, in every
Okay.
moment. And coming from somebody who didn't know that I was worthy of love, okay, or
Mm-hmm.
had support, because I had pretty much built my life by myself. Like it was always me. Um, and to have to soften into letting something else support me or letting myself be supported, it was a whole new experience. And I knew that the moment that I felt this purity within my whole body, I
Mm-hmm.
need to get that out into the world because I want to help the person that I used to be before they get there,
Yeah.
or help
It's
the
amazing.
person help the person that's struggling to understand that they're still worthy to be here. And so now the work that I do now is very much foundational. So I don't believe in spiritual bypassing. I think that it's great that we have all of these traditions and rituals and everything. But if we are not grounded into this body and working through our experiences that are hard and challenging, or the things that we don't see on the sub layer, we are only really running from the very person that we are. And so all of my work is about helping people rebuild those foundational layers so that they can understand themselves, so that they can do this work. And that's what makes my practice a little different. You know, I am a Reiki master. However, I focus on root cause energy work. So I am figuring out why are you actually coming in? You know, what are we coming in to actually work on? And from there, it's about healing through those various experiences. I've had different clients come in who really struggled to, you know, see their way forward. And it was just that they didn't value who they are. A lot of it is helping people understand the very value that they are for physically being here as they are, even if they're on a journey of transformation or change. And that's how I do things today. You know, when I'm feeling like, we just had all this news with my husband, like, we get here to North Carolina. Okay. Just moved here. I'm in vibing, loving it. Everything's going amazing. And we get here and they're like, oh, we don't know why they sent you here because we're reorganizing the unit. And we're like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, you're going to move in a year. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Then a month later, they give him the bad news that because he is a part of the AGR program, it's been cut year after year after year.
What's AGR stand for?
Active Guard Reserve. So it's a hybrid between active duty and reservist. So my husband's full-time active duty, overseeing the reservist. So he helps with their unit readiness, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
Just so people know. So he's in the office, 9 to 5 as a soldier. Anyways, they're cutting the program. And so everybody that wasn't promoting was the first layer. Anybody that has their 20 years is the second layer, which is my husband.
Okay.
So he has 31 years total service, 21 years active. And because he was close enough to retirement, they're basically saying you no longer have a job.
Something doesn't add up.
No,
because
really.
I hear recruitment is at an all-time high. Recruiting, building the military, building the military. How is it we're recruiting so many new people, but yet we have somebody who's served 21 years that isn't reassigned with all this great experience and service?
Because they don't want to have to pay them. And
really?
I'm not kidding you.
Just like
It's
corporate
a hard,
America.
It honestly has opened my eyes to see that in this season, because it would be different. His OERs or his, the way that they get ranked have been phenomenal. He was on the alternative list for War College. So it's not like he's a deadbeat person in the military. He's literally had great remarks. So it's just that he's 4 years away from that mandatory retirement date. So that is why, because they get to save. He won't promote to colonel. He's at lieutenant colonel. So they save that money. And it's just that specific program, because its AGR program is like meant for people who, again, want to be active duty, but essentially it's the same thing as being active duty. You just have a little bit longer periods of time at your assignments. So, and there's different other differences too, but he was not expecting it at all, because again, his record has been stellar. And so it was like, we can go through those kind of life experiences where it's a shock, and I consider it a recalibration. It was like, we weren't anticipating that. So we have to filter through a process and allow it to be real and how we're actually experiencing it. But then it's like, okay, what is the next step? Like, what are we here to do in this season? Which is kind of where I've had to kind of elevate up a little bit while he's working through all of this. Cause it's one thing when it's your choice to leave the military, but when it's not, that's a whole other layer, right?
Like anything, when it's not your choice to leave anything that you like to do, and then you're in the zone, it really sucks. Hey, can I pull you back to the energy work?
Yes.
So, Let me see. When you talk to common folk, the layperson on energy, there are varied thoughts and what's the word I'm looking for really here? Impressions that you get from people who do energy work. We shared the term woo woo, right? And I have some friends who say I'm very woo woo, right? All of this stuff, or not too woo, I think was your thing or something, right? But energy work is a term for something that's been around for thousands of years. There have been different forms, and the first energy work that I was ever introduced to was qigong, Chinese energy work, right? I didn't practice it, but I was aware of it, and I had friends who studied martial arts that through their immigrant teachers that have come to this country who brought the practice of qigong to their studies. I had a friend, Damien, who was a very accomplished martial artist, and a friend, Vinny, very, very accomplished. Vinny studied with a South Korean master. Damien studied with people from all over the world. And they would talk about, cultivating and circulating the life force and the energy inside them. I pulled up a list of common types of energy work. Reiki's at the top of the list, by the way. And this is not in alphabetical order. A Japanese technique where practitioners gently place hands on or near the body to channel energy healing. And I'm going through this purposefully because I want people to understand this at a simple fourth grade level before you open the box. Okay. Qigong, Tai Chi, right? Same thing we just talked about. Movement practices based on Chinese tradition. Chakra balancing. Okay. We've all heard this, what is it? 7 chakras based on Indian traditions, focusing on clearing or aligning 7 major energy centers. Okay. And it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting. I used to follow this guy on YouTube. He was this crazy barber. He has since passed away. And one of my goals, one of the things I wanted to do in life is I wanted to go get a haircut from this guy in India. He had like an 8x8 box where he had his barber shop in, and there were fans, and it was hot and sweaty in there. But he gave you a facial, a haircut, and did all these wacky techniques. And he's like, oh, I stimulate the 7 chakras, right? And his name was Baba. I mean, and he became a sensation on YouTube. He blew up. I'll find some of the videos and I'll send you one. And my whole family will be looking at me. Of course you want to get a haircut from that guy. But that's what he did. Chakra balancing, healing touch, therapeutic touch, techniques often used in hospitals and wellness centers. So I think what you're doing is you're starting to come more into Western language around ancient sort of Eastern things, and then sound or frequency healing. Using bowls, tuning forks, or special frequencies to influence the body's energy field. So I want to break that down. Like, this is not woo woo, right? These have been things that have been honed and practiced for literally thousands of years. If you go back to Qigong and Tai Chi, and I don't know if Reiki is a new term or an old one, Candice. Not sure when.
It's a combination. So it's only been around here for a couple of hundred years, but it was practiced in Japan well before then, even before the lineage that I learned under. And, breaking down energy at its basic root is that we are energy. Everything within us is energy. Everything in our environment carries energy. Even, our water has energy. So when you were talking about sound frequency, what sound healing actually is that because we resonate at a certain frequency, and I'll go through each energy center to briefly describe them so people can kind of see themselves in it.
Yep.
Is that sound frequency helps your body physically recalibrate to the energy frequency that is vibrating before you. Okay. So that is, and they have developed different frequencies or tuned in that these frequencies help you feel ease in this area of the body. So that's one example. They've done a ton of scientific studies on energy workers and having them be in a different room practicing energy work, and they measured the frequencies around the body, the frequencies within the body. I even have a client who his Apple Watch registers a nap every single time we do a session.
Hmm.
And it's because it takes the body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. It literally makes your body go into ease. So, our energy is a combination of our experiences in life.
Okay.
Every single emotion that we have vibrates at a different frequency. Emotions are a signal that something is in alignment, out of alignment. But if I can just go to the basics. So, I'm going to talk about the energy centers or the chakras, and they all align to create who you are. The root is the base of our spine. It is the root of our foundations. It is what we believe about our community, about ourselves, about seeing ourselves as a part of that collective community. It's our safety, our security. It's usually tied to finances. And it is literally, think about it in your physical body as the foundational system. So your bone structure, anything that helps you maintain and operate.
Okay.
As you go up, it's the sacral energy. So the sacral is one of the most complex ones because it holds our passion, our purpose, our desire, our creativity. We're birthing energy. So it's the female and male reproductive system. So what we physically bring into the world and then also what we create.
Okay.
It's also our emotions, right? So when we are rooted in who we are and we have passion and purpose and desire, and then we lead into the solar plexus where that's our personal power and autonomy, then we're able to really communicate what it is that we do and who it is that we are in this world.
Okay.
So as you're starting to understand what each energy center represent, you can kind of see and even feel in your body where you might be, quote, out of alignment. The solar plexus is also like your belief in yourself. It didn't like outside of anything that is in existence. So there's no, rules or expectations. It's just you are who you are because of who you are. The heart is the conscious connection. So I am connected with you through the heart space. We're connected with all through the heart space. It's why we pray at the heart. It's why we say namaste at the heart. It is compassion, love, and understanding. And it also holds grief. So grief is technically held in the lungs, but it is a part of the heart space. So when it's in balance, you can have and hold conversations better because you're more empathetic. You have compassion for others. You're actually able to fully hear them and see them as they are instead of your projection. Because again, you're whole inside. Um, as you go to the throat, it's literally your throat and it's our communication. So it's how we interpret our world, how we take in communication, but then how we also communicate that truth to others, how we communicate to ourselves. It's all of that. The third eye is our intuitive knowing. So it's our spiritual connection. It's also how we trust in ourselves to see our vision, take our vision forward, actualize the vision, even being able to see ourselves in that very vision. It's our physical eyesight too. And then we get to the crown, which is our conscious connection. So what we believe about the universe, God, the divine, however you choose to label. And when they're all in alignment, you can see how you experience your world differently. Now, it's not saying that you're always in this like Zen state, as they call it, right? We're just like enjoying life. But you can tell when you're not resonating at the desired frequency that you would like to be at, meaning if you're really rooted in who you are, and that's why a lot of the work I do focuses on that first, then you can really be and interact in your world. Like we can have what's going on in the world today be going on and then go into an actual conversation and ignite hope, right? If we don't have that, then we don't have that recalibration, then we can take that same energy that's within us and ignite fear and suffering. So the more and more we tune into where we are as a whole, the more and more we're able to create a better world in general.
So with these things being out when, often I bet you the majority of people have some misalignment on all of these things, one more than the other. I mean, it's a practice to get them in alignment. You ever notice somebody walks with a limp? Maybe they're out of alignment. at a chiropractor. They got one hip higher than the other. And they go get adjusted, and all of a sudden they go, wow, this is what it feels like to be level. But it feels odd.
Mm-hmm.
Feels odd because now things are in perfect alignment. But it's not the way you've walked for the last 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so you tend to go back. I once had a person that worked for me who went through a lot of personal development through coaching that I brought into the company through an organization called Thinking Without Restrictions. And she evolved like to be a standout in the entire company and recognized by the CEO, head of learning and development, like holy cow, what have you done with this person, and where did you hide her former self? And when I resigned, or when I left that company, she said to me, do you have any last words of advice? I said, yeah. I said, I pray and hope that you don't regain a stiff neck. She looked at me. She goes, well, that's the oddest thing anybody's ever said to me. I said, I'll leave the name out. And I said, when I came here, you were this very guarded, very aggressive, very defensive individual that acted a certain way because you thought that was what you needed to do to succeed. And through this coaching and evolution, you've gotten readjusted and calibrated where you've been recognized as a standout, not only in our organization, but in the entire company. I said, and with, much like when you have a stiff neck and you go to get it adjusted and you get back in line and you feel great. And then all of a sudden you just want to lean the head a little bit again because that feels like center. You got to constantly straighten it out. And so in your experience, when people are sort of getting realigned, do they have a temporary, or do they have any experience of it not feeling right?
So, yes and no. I think
Okay.
what I've experienced in this work is that they feel so good that they're almost afraid it's going to go away.
Okay.
And
Well,
so we have,
all right.
yeah, so we have to really work on the integration period afterwards. So anytime you do energy work and you're recalibrating, what happens more often than not is that their external world starts becoming more vivid, meaning they're paying more attention.
Yeah.
So maybe the friendships that need to fade away that you're like, oh, I didn't realize, like they're not the greatest people to be around right now.
Okay.
Or the, significant other that's doing or not necessarily working on themselves. You start to pay attention to those things more. So you have to be more intentional to have those conversations to say, hey, this is what I'm recognizing, this is what I'm feeling, and be able to sort through that. And a lot of people get nervous about that because they're like, wow, I didn't realize how much was off in my world. A lot of times when I'm working with people that are like super successful on the outside, but they just feel like they're crumbling on the inside because they've been
Yeah.
holding it all together, they seem to feel so much more empowered as they step back into the world because they're finding purpose again. They're finding their passion again. They don't necessarily, and I say this because it's like they don't have to go Jerry Maguire, leave their
Yeah.
job,
Yep. Yep.
they can actually go back into the workplace and enjoy it again because they find renewed passion and purpose, or they move on to something that gives them that. But I think the biggest thing that happens is as you start tuning into what it is that you desire, the things that you were filling space with often start to fall apart or fade away. And it's not
Mm.
like destruction mode, right? But if you're truly stepping into alignment, there's going to be things that no longer align for you in that new season. It's like any period of growth. You can't keep the same habits and move
Yeah.
forward, So it's the same concept. It does sometimes feel a little awkward in the beginning because you're like, wow, I didn't realize I could feel this good. And it's like, is it going to be like this forever? And the big thing is that we go through life experiences every day. So all of this work becomes a practice. It's one of the reasons why a lot of clients only see me a handful of times, maybe 6 or 7, and then I teach them how to really take these practices further, because you do have to tune into your energy and your body all the time.
Mm.
And
I
anyways,
guess like going to the gym or like reading and learning, just you got to have these reps to constantly do that. Hey, Thank you for that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. You know, what I want to tell people is that keep your mind open, because I think in hearing you describe it, and really for me anchoring it into something that's been around for thousands of years. And if you have these studies that you've told me about, and if you can send those to me, I'd be very interested in reading it. Because when you look up, you know, if anybody were to do what I do and go to ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or something and say, hey, what are the science and perspectives on energy and healing work, even though it's thousands of years, the science evidence they claim is mixed.
Mm-hmm.
So is the science evidence on a lot of pharmaceuticals that come out. But in Western thoughts and Western views of medicine, there's a process. There are studies, there are papers, there's peer reviews, there's all of these things. So anything you have like that, that would be great. And when they say it's mixed, they say many people report feeling relaxed, calm, or emotionally lighter after sessions, but measurable mechanisms are not fully understood, not discarded,
Yeah.
right? So this is the key distinction here. Not discarded, not fully understood. So
Can I share something with you?
You can, but let me just finish this story. I used to go for acupuncture, and I'd sit and lay there for 45 minutes and come back, and somebody say, how do you feel? I go, I feel pretty relaxed. You think it's the acupuncture? I go, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Right. And he goes, well, how are you going to know? I go, I'm going to keep going. Why? And I said, when you have needles all over your entire body, you have to lay perfectly still. There's not another 45 minutes in my world in a week where I am conscious and perfectly still for 45 minutes. I said, I don't know if it's the needles, or I don't know if it's that silence and still feeling. Whatever it is, I'm going to keep going, because I know how I feel before, I know how I feel during, and I know how I feel after. Now, I'm telling you, acupuncture is amazing. If we had another hour, I could tell you 20 stories about miraculous healing of like pretty bad things with acupuncture that I went through, sciatic nerve problems, bad back, all right here in the hand, all right here, just crazy. But please tell me something. You're about to tell me something.
Yeah. So two things came to mind. So remind me about stillness, but this story about a client. So this client is in her 70s and came to me through a referral. And she has suffered with autoimmune disease her entire life since she was in her 20s. And without going into details, in working with me, we have been able to clear and heal some of her internal damage that is going on.
Amazing.
It has been, and her doctor has been showing her the results. Like, she is so excited because I see it as her color has come back. So in doing this work, like I told her to go back and see the very first video, that because I always ask clients if they want it recorded, because sometimes they just want to review it. And I was like, you will see the color shift in you, because when we first started working, she just looked drained, and she was really tired. And it's not that it's completely cured or anything by any means, but it's giving her enough vibrancy back into her life that she's able to go do more things. Like, she just got back from a trip to Australia, where she was able to go and be around and do things a lot easier, and so that's just one example of the way that this work is truly miraculous. I do believe it is what you put into it. Like, we've worked through a ton of layers of her experience, meaning childhood memories, these kind of cycles and patterns that cause damage within the body. And it's been really cool to get to see her step into something new and to really value who she is. And in her 70s. So if that tells you anything. And then stillness. So this came out in another podcast episode that, it just came through me. So think about the only time in childhood we were really taught about stillness. When was that?
I don't think ever.
No. And guess what? Every time we were told to go be in stillness, guess what? It was in timeout, in the corner, put your head down. Punishment. Yeah. So naturally, we think of stillness as punishment, still to this day, whether we recognize it or not, because we also mean that we're not being productive, we're not moving forward, we're not doing something. And so just to give people that awareness that a lot of these patterns were created subliminally, right? Like that. Even down to, when you first think about running, when you're running, your heart rate increases, right? It's going fast and it's doing its thing, it's pumping. When you stop, it doesn't just stop, it takes its time to recalibrate.
Right.
So, same thing when you go to do meditation or stillness, you're going to have all this going because it's what it's used to. Like, give it the time to just chill out, and watch it shift over time. Like, it's a practice, like everything, it's a practice.
Indeed. Candice, how do people get in touch with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super active there, or they can stalk my life on Instagram.
Okay. I'm going to put all your socials in the description section of this episode. Today's been, as my grandmother used to say, it's been delightful. And so it's been a good time. And thank you for that wonderful walkthrough from the base of your spine all the way up to your eyes and your cerebral side. That was a great. And I think we did today. You did. I think you gave people a better common understanding of energy work than this woo-woo stuff that people don't understand, that there's a science and there are thousands of years of practice behind it in various different lanes. But and it's not a cure-all, be-all for everything. You've got to move and exercise. You've got to eat right. You've got to fill your heart. You've got to give. You've got to give. Giving is part of receiving, by the way. And so thank you for sharing your experience, for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Your technology is flawless. You've got a great technology support help person. So have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.